The first time I saw my wife making love with another man was through our bedroom window. I stood frozen on our back patio, the grocery bag still clutched in my hands, watching as the washing machine repairman bent Felicity over our bed, the same bed I tucked her into that morning, when her anxiety was so bad she couldn't leave the house. Listen till the end, you will be shocked. I guarantee. As I ended in a prison cell, I didn't interrupt. I didn't smash the window or kick down the door. I just stood there, watching the woman I'd married 3 years ago moan in pleasure with a stranger, her face transformed into something I'd never seen before, radiant, uninhibited, free. My name is Luke Mercer, and 6 months ago, I was considering having my bipolar wife declared mentally incompetent. Felicity and I met at a charity gala in San Francisco 4 years ago. I was bartending, a temporary gig to pay the bills while I networked my way up in the financial sector. In reality, I was a broke nobody with manufactured credentials and an exaggerated resume, desperately trying to reinvent myself after leaving my hometown under less than favorable circumstances. She was stunning, tall, elegant, with dark hair cascading over bare shoulders and a smile that lit up the room. More importantly, she was wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly rent and a family heirloom necklace that could have paid off my student loans. When she asked for a gin and tonic, I gave her my most charming smile and made it a double. "You don't look like you belong behind that bar," she said, sliding a 20 into the tip jar. I leaned forward conspiratorially, just researching for my novel, getting to know how the other half lives. Her eyebrow arched. "And which half do you belong to?" "Whichever one you're in." She laughed, and I knew I had her. What Felicity didn't know, what no one in San Francisco knew, was that back in my college town, I was known as a predator. I'd slept with dozens of women, making promises I never intended to keep, borrowing money I never repaid, leaving a trail of broken hearts and restraining orders. When things got too hot, I'd simply disappeared in the night, changed my name from Lucas Peterson to Luke Mercer, and headed west to start fresh. San Francisco was my blank slate, and Felicity Chandler, with her family's Pacific Heights mansion and substantial trust fund, was my ticket to the life I deserved. "She's having another episode," I said into the phone, keeping my voice low as I stood in our kitchen. "No, it's worse this time. She hasn't gotten out of bed in 3 days. The medication isn't working." On the other end of the line, Dr. Reynolds sighed. "We may need to adjust her dosage again. Can you bring her in tomorrow?" "I'll try, but you know how she gets. The anxiety makes it almost impossible to leave the house. Document everything, Luke. These cycles, the behaviors, her responses. It could be important for her treatment plan." I hung up and smiled. Yes, I would document everything, every mood swing, every anxious episode, every irrational outburst. It would all be useful when the time came to convince a judge that my poor wife was incapable of managing her own affairs. Felicity's bipolar disorder had been manageable when we first met. She'd been open about her diagnosis, explaining the cycles of depression and hypomania, showing me her medication organizer on our third date as casually as other women might have shown me pictures of their pets. Back then, I pretended to admire her courage, her resilience. In reality, I was calculating how her vulnerability might benefit me. What I hadn't anticipated was how exhausting living with mental illness could be. The 3 a.m. panic attacks, the days when getting out of bed seemed impossible for her, the periods of agitation when nothing I did was right, the medication adjustments that left her foggy and distant, and always, the crushing anxiety that colored everything in her world. "Luke!" Her voice floated down from our bedroom. "Can you come up?" I found her curled on her side, our plush duvet pulled up to her chin despite the warm day. Her dark hair was matted to her forehead, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Hey, beautiful," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Rough day?" "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I feel like I'm drowning, like I'm watching my life slip away while I'm trapped in this prison." She gestured at her head. "Do you know what it's like to feel like you're wasting your life? Like there's something meaningful waiting for you, but you can't reach it?" I stroked her hair, the perfect picture of the concerned husband. "The doctor wants to see you tomorrow. We'll figure this out, I promise." "The washing machine is making that noise again," she said, changing subjects abruptly. "Can you call someone?" "Already did. Guys coming tomorrow while I'm at work." I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Try to rest. I'll bring you some tea." She grabbed my hand as I stood. "You're too good to me, Luke. I don't deserve you." If she only knew. Colonel Gregory Phoenix burst through our front door the next morning without knocking, startling me so Badly, I spilled coffee down my shirt. "Where's my girl?" he demanded, filling our entryway with his massive frame. Despite his name, Gregory wasn't actually military. He was Felicity's godfather, a successful restaurateur with a flair for the dramatic and a self-bestowed nickname that had stuck since his college football days. "Jesus, Colonel, ever heard of a doorbell?" I dabbed at my shirt with a napkin. "Doorbells are for people who haven't changed your diapers, son." He clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to make me wince. "Now, where's Felicity?" "Got tickets to that art installation she's been yammering about. She's not having a good day," I said quietly. "Anxiety's bad." "She's still in bed." The Colonel's face softened, but his eyes, sharp as ever, narrowed slightly as they studied me. "That so? Well, let me see if old Uncle Greg can't work some magic. Sometimes a change of scenery is just what the doctor ordered." Before I could protest, he was taking the stairs 2 at a time, his booming voice calling out, "Felicity, your favorite person in the world has arrived to save you from this prison of Egyptian cotton and memory foam." I followed him upstairs, irritated at the interruption. The Colonel had always been suspicious of me, watching me with those knowing eyes like he could see right through my carefully constructed facade. More than once, he cornered me at family gatherings, asking pointed questions about my past that I deflected with practiced ease. To my surprise, by the time I reached our bedroom, Felicity was sitting up, a faint smile on her lips as the Colonel regaled her with some outrageous story, his hands gesturing wildly. "So I told the chef, that's not béarnaise, that's béarnaise. You're trying to psychologically manipulate my taste buds." He roared with laughter at his own joke. "Got the meal comped and a bottle of champagne. Which reminds me," he produced a small paper bag from his jacket pocket. "Brought you those French chocolates you like. The ones with the sea salt." "You didn't have to do that," Felicity said, but she was already opening the bag. "Course I did. Can't visit my favorite goddaughter empty-handed." He glanced at me, his smile never wavering. "Luke, be a good lad and fetch Felicity some tea to go with these, would you?" It wasn't really a request. Reluctantly, I headed back downstairs, lingering just out of sight to listen. "How are you really doing, sweetheart?" The Colonel's voice was gentle now. A pause. "I don't know, Greg. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. Like this marriage, this life, it's a burden. Like I'm losing time for something more meaningful." My hands clenched into fists. This was why I hated when the Colonel visited. He always got her talking, questioning, doubting. If I was going to make my plan work, I needed Felicity compliant, independent, not philosophical and restless. Happiness isn't a destination, kiddo. It's moments. And you deserve all the happy moments you can grab. But what if I'm broken? What if this is as good as it gets? "Darling girl, you listen to me. You are not broken. You have an illness. Yes, but it doesn't define you. And as good as it gets is a moving target." He lowered his voice, but I could still hear him. "Are you sure Luke is helping? Really helping?" I'd heard enough. Making as much noise as possible, I returned with the tea. "Here we go. And look, the washing machine repair guy just pulled up. I've got to get to work. But, Colonel, are you staying for a while?" "Try and get rid of me," he said, his arm protectively around Felicity's shoulders. "We're going to that exhibition, even if I have to carry her there myself." As I left for work, actually a meeting with a lawyer to discuss conservatorship options, the washing machine repairman was heading up our walkway. Young guy, muscle from hauling appliances, with an easy smile and clear eyes. "Front loader in the laundry room," I told him, gesturing vaguely toward the house. "My wife's home, but she's not feeling well. Just let yourself out when you're done." 6 hours later, I returned with takeout Thai food and the first draft of conservatorship papers hidden in my briefcase, only to discover my wife bent over our marriage bed, crying out in pleasure as she clutched the sheets with white-nickeled hands, while the washing machine repairman, whose name badge read Mike, fixed something in her I'd never been able to touch. "You absolute fucking asshole." The Colonel's fist connected with my jaw with enough force to send me sprawling across Felicity's kitchen floor. It had been 3 days since I discovered the affair. 3 days of silent rage and careful planning. "What the hell, Greg?" "Don't what the hell me, you little weasel. I know what you've been up to." He towered over me, a file folder clutched in his massive hand. Conservatorship? Having her declared incompetent? Planning to take control of her trust fund? He threw the papers at me, pages fluttering around us like toxic snowflakes. "She trusted you." I scrambled to my feet, mind racing. "You're overreacting. I'm trying to protect her. She's sick." "Save it for someone who doesn't see right through you," Luke. Or should I say Lucas Peterson? Yeah, that's right. He smiled grimly at my shocked expression. Didn't think anyone would connect the dots? I've had a private investigator on you since the day you married my goddaughter. I know all about the women you conned in college, the money you stole, the restraining orders. The only reason I didn't expose you sooner was because Felicity seemed happy. But this, he gestured at the papers, this crosses every line. She cheated on me. I shouted, playing my trump card. Your perfect goddaughter fucked the washing machine repairman in our bed. Instead of the outrage I expected, the colonel threw back his head and laughed. Good for her. About time she got some actual pleasure in the sham of a marriage. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Let me be perfectly clear. You're going to pack your bags and leave. Tonight, no alimony, no property claims, nothing. Or I release everything I have on you. To the police, to your employer, to every newspaper in the city. Your choice. I straightened my shirt, mind racing through options. And if I have evidence of my own, medical records proving she's unstable, testimony from her doctors, falsified records won't hold up, son. And her real doctors, the ones I made sure she kept seeing without your knowledge, have documented everything, including your attempts to exaggerate her symptoms. He smiled coldly. Checkmate. The front door opened and Felicity walked in. She looked different, confident, radiant, with a calmness I'd never seen before. Behind her was Mike the repairman, carrying grocery bags. She took in the scene, the papers scattered across the floor, the colonel's defensive stance, and nodded like it all made perfect sense. I see Uncle Greg filled you in, she said coolly. Good. That saves me the trouble. She set her purse down and faced me. I want a divorce, Luke. I know about the conservatorship plans. I know about your past. And I know who you really are. I looked between them, realizing I'd been outplayed. You knew? All this time. Not at first. But Greg had suspicions from day one. The PI confirmed everything months ago. She smiled, and it was a smile I'd never seen before. Strong, unafraid. The anxiety attacks, the depressive episodes, they got worse after we married. That wasn't a coincidence, was it? Mike moved protectively to her side, and I noticed his hand slip easily into hers, a gesture of practiced intimacy. How long? I demanded, gesturing between them. 6 weeks, Felicity answered honestly. After you called him to fix the washing machine. But this isn't about Mike, Luke. This is about you trying to gaslight me into thinking I was more ill than I am, isolating me from my family and friends, all so you could get your hands on my money. You're bipolar. You have debilitating anxiety. That's not gaslighting, it's reality. I have a manageable condition that mysteriously got worse after I married you. She stepped closer. Funny thing about anxiety, it can be triggered or worsened by environmental factors, like living with someone who subtly undermines your confidence, who questions your memories, who forgets to refill your prescriptions and acts concerned when you have episodes. The pieces clicked into place. The colonel found my papers. That's why you slept with the repairman. Revenge. Felicity laughed, and the sound was so genuine it startled me. God, your ego is incredible. I didn't sleep with Mike for revenge. I slept with him because for the first time in years, I felt something real, something that wasn't clouded by fear or shame or medication. And magically your anxiety just disappeared? I sneered. No, but it's amazing how much clearer your mind becomes when you remove the poison from your life. She glanced at her watch. You have 1 hour to pack essentials. The rest can be arranged through lawyers. I straightened, abandoning all pretense. You think I'm walking away empty-handed after 3 years? That house in Pacific Heights has my name on it, too. The colonel stepped forward, but Felicity held up a hand to stop him. Actually, it doesn't. The house isn't a trust you can't touch. We have a prenup, remember? The one you didn't read carefully because you were so sure you found other ways to get my money. This isn't over. I warned, already calculated my next move. I still had the forged medical records, the doctored videos of her episodes, the witness statements from friends who testified to her instability. One setback didn't mean I had to abandon the plan entirely. You're right about that, the colonel said cheerfully, cracking his knuckles. This is just getting interesting. As I climbed the stairs to pack my bags, I heard Mike ask quietly, "Are you okay?" "You know what?" Felicity replied, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. For the first time in years, I think I actually am. Turns out My wife wasn't the only one with an illness. I had my own disease, greed, and unlike her bipolar disorder, mine had no medication to keep it in check. 2 weeks after I'd been kicked out of our home, I sat in a dingy hotel room plotting my revenge while nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey. My lawyer, a sweaty man named Elliot with a comb-over and stained teeth, spread documents across the bed. "It's a long shot," he admitted, pointing to passages in Felicity's medical history I'd altered. "If the judge suspects these records are fabricated, we're done. Not just a case. I mean jail time, disbarment from me, the works. The records aren't fabricated. I lied. They're just selectively emphasized." Right. Elliot didn't look convinced. "And these videos of her episodes?" I pulled out my phone and showed him clips I'd filmed over the past year. Felicity crying, Felicity screaming into a pillow, Felicity curled in a fetal position. What the videos didn't show was what happened before the cameras started rolling. The pills I'd accidentally switched, the gaslighting comments I'd made for hours, the way I'd isolated her from friends until she broke. "Jesus," Elliot muttered, looking genuinely disturbed. "She's really sick." "Exactly. And I'm just a concerned husband who wants what's best for her." I leaned forward. "The inheritance is just a means to an end, to make sure she gets the care she needs." Even as the words left my mouth, I marveled at my own capacity for bullshit. The truth was, I'd seen Felicity's grandparents' mansion in Pacific Heights exactly once before deciding I had to have it. 5 stories of Victorian splendor overlooking the bay, with hand-carved moldings and a wine cellar older than the state of California. The house alone was worth 8 figures. Add in the trust fund, the vacation properties, the stock portfolio. It was a fortune that would let me live like the king I'd always known I was meant to be. "We filed for divorce on grounds of adultery," Elliot continued, "then immediately petitioned for emergency conservatorship based on her deteriorating mental state. If the judge bites, you control everything, the house, the accounts, all of it. And if she fights it?" Elliot's smile was ugly. "That's the beauty of claiming someone's mentally incompetent. The more they fight, the more they prove your point." I liked how he thought. The next day I drove to Pacific Heights, parking my beat-up Honda a block away from Felicity's mansion. Our mansion, I reminded myself. I deserved half of everything she had simply for putting up with her issues for 3 years. I watched the house for an hour before I saw movement. Felicity emerging onto the sweeping porch with a cup of coffee, looking annoyingly serene in the morning light. Behind her came Mike the fucking washing machine repairman, his arm sliding easily around her waist as he kissed her temple. 3 years I'd invested in this con, and some appliance jockey swoops in and gets it all without lifting a finger? My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Meeting set with judge. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring evidence." I smiled. By this time tomorrow, I'd be back in that house, and Mike would be back to fixing other people's broken machines. The colonel was waiting for me outside the courthouse, looking like an aging prizefighter in an expensive suit. He fell into step beside me as I approached the entrance. "Not too late to walk away, son," he said conversationally. "Drop the case, sign the divorce papers, move on with your life." "And let her keep everything?" "I don't think so. You signed a prenup. Prenups can be broken, especially when one party wasn't mentally competent when they signed." The colonel sighed. "You're making a mistake. You have no idea what you're up against. A bipolar woman and a washed-up old man? I think I'll take my chances." He stopped, catching my arm. For a moment, I thought he might hit me again, but instead, he just looked sad. "You know what's truly pathetic? You actually could have had it all, legitimately. Felicity loved you. God knows why. If you'd just been a decent husband, she would have shared everything with you freely." I pulled my arm away. "Spare me the lecture. She's not coming today," he said as I turned to go, "just so you know." I smirked. "Afraid to face me?" "No. She's meeting with the FBI." That stopped me cold. "What?" "Turns out, fabricating medical records is a federal offense. So is wire fraud, and identity theft, and tax evasion." He ticked them off on his fingers. "Should I go on?" My mouth went dry. "You're bluffing." "Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, good luck explaining those doctor videos to the judge. I sent her the originals this morning. You know, the full versions that show you gaslighting my goddaughter for hours before filming her breakdowns." He smiled pleasantly. "You really should secure your cloud storage better." With that, he strolled away, whistling tunelessly. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose, stared at me with unconcealed contempt. "Mr. Mercer, do you take me for a fool?" I shifted uncomfortably. "No, Your Honor, because only a fool will believe these fabrications." She gestured to the medical records I'd submitted. I've reviewed Mrs. Mercer's actual medical files, provided by her treating physician of 8 years. They paint a very different picture than what you presented. My lawyer began to sweat visibly. "Your Honor, if I could explain—" "Save it, Mr. Elliott. I'm more interested in hearing Mr. Mercer explain why he thought falsifying federal medical documents was a good strategy." She leaned forward. "Or why he believed manipulating his wife's medication to induce episodes was acceptable behavior." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. "I never—" "Spare me. I've reviewed the evidence, including video footage from your home security system that appears to show you replacing pills in her prescription bottles." She glanced at a folder. "Substituting her mood stabilizers with caffeine pills? Really, Mr. Mercer?" I felt something drain from my face. Home security footage? There weren't any cameras in our bedroom. Unless Mrs. Mercer installed cameras 6 months ago at the recommendation of her doctor, who had grown suspicious of a sudden deterioration in her condition. The judge closed the folder with finality. "Not only am I dismissing your petition for conservatorship, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution." "Your Honor, please." "You systematically abuse a woman with a mental health condition, Mr. Mercer. You exploited her vulnerability for financial gain. In my 40 years on the bench, I've seen some deplorable behavior, but this—" She shook her head in disgust. "Bailiff, please detain Mr. Mercer. He's being remanded into custody pending arraignment." As the bailiff approached, I turned to my lawyer, who was already packing his briefcase, avoiding my eyes. "Do something." I hissed. "You're on your own," he muttered. "I'm not getting disbarred for this." The last thing I saw before they led me away was the colonel, leaning against the back wall of the courtroom, his face impassive as he gave me a small, mocking salute. Prison gives you time to think. Too much time. In the 3 months I've been awaiting trial, I've had nothing but hours to reflect on the spectacular implosion of my carefully constructed life. The federal charges alone could put me away for decades. The state charges for domestic abuse and attempted fraud are just icing on the cake. My court-appointed lawyer, Elliott, dropped me like radioactive waste, says my best hope is a plea deal, but even that would mean years behind bars. Years in which Felicity will be living in that beautiful mansion with Mike, free from the prison I created for her. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent 3 years making her feel trapped, and now I'm the one in a cage. But the most disturbing part of all this forced introspection isn't the legal consequences. It's the realization that somewhere along the way, I became a monster, not in a dramatic movie villain way, but in the quiet, insidious manner that happens when you let greed consume you one small compromise at a time. I remember the look in Felicity's eyes that day in the kitchen when she confronted me. Not hatred or even anger, but something worse. Pity, like she was looking at something broken beyond repair. Yesterday, I received divorce papers. My lawyer advised me to sign them without contest. Fighting would only add to my legal troubles. Along with the papers was a brief note from Felicity. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." The worst part? For 3 years, I had exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't recognize it. "You have a visitor," the guard announced, opening my cell. I wasn't expecting anyone. My former friends had abandoned me. My family back home had disowned me years ago, and Felicity had made it clear through her lawyers that she wouldn't be seeing me again. In the visitation room, the colonel sat at a metal table, his massive frame making the institutional furniture look like dollhouse pieces. "You look like hell," he observed as I sat across from him. "Prison will do that." I rubbed my stubble jaw. "If you came to gloat, get on with it. Not here to gloat." He pushed a small envelope across the table. "Felicity asked me to give you this." I eyed it suspiciously. "More legal threats?" "Just open it." Inside was a check for $50,000 and a brief note. "For your legal defense. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to move on. F." I stared at the check in disbelief. Why would she do this? Because, unlike you, she's not a vindictive person. The colonel leaned forward. "She's also not nearly as ill as you made her believe. The bipolar disorder is real but manageable. The debilitating anxiety? That was largely your creation." "That's not true," I protested weakly. She was like that when I met her. She had episodes, sure, but they became more frequent and severe after you enter her life. Funny coincidence, huh? He studied me with those penetrating eyes. You know what the real tragedy is? You could have had a good life with her, a real partnership. Instead, you saw her as nothing but a mark. Is she happy? I asked, surprising myself with how much I suddenly needed to know. The Colonel's expression softened slightly. She's healing. The divorce will be final next month. She started painting again, something you probably didn't even know she loved. And yes, Mike is still around. Turns out he's got a degree in mechanical engineering and only fixed appliances as a side gig while launching his own startup. He chuckled. The washing machine was never actually broken, by the way. She just needed a reason to get someone else in the house after she discovered your little scheme. I felt a strange mixture of emotions, anger, shame, and something else I couldn't quite name. Why are you really here? To deliver the check, like I said, but also, he sighed heavily, to see if there's anything human left in there. He tapped my chest. Felicity wanted to know. And your verdict? He stood, towering over me. The jury's still out. But if I were you, I'd use this time to figure out who you really are beneath all the lies. Because the man you've been pretending to be, he's headed nowhere good. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Tell her I'm sorry. The Colonel paused, then nodded once without looking back. I will, but I doubt it'll make much difference. After he left, I sat for a long time staring at the check. Then, slowly, I tore it into tiny pieces. It wasn't much, but it was the first honest thing I'd done in years. The Colonel's visit forced me to confront uncomfortable truths. Alone in my cell that night, I started making a list of every person I'd ever conned, every woman I'd manipulated, every friend I'd betrayed. The list grew so long, I had to continue on the back of the paper, then onto a second sheet. When I finished, I stared at the names, trying to remember their faces. Some were vivid in my memory, the pain in their eyes when they realized who I really was. Others had faded to nothing more than a vague recollection of hair color or the sound of their laugh. All these lives I'd touched with my poison. All these people who had trusted me, only to be betrayed. And for what? Money that never satisfied. Power that was always temporary. An endless hunger for more that left me emptier with each conquest. In the darkness of my cell, I finally confronted the truth I'd been running from. I was no better than the father who'd abandoned me, the stepfather who'd beaten me, the mother who'd looked the other way. I'd become exactly what I hated most, someone who used others to fill the void inside themselves. The realization brought no peace, no catharsis, just a hollow ache that spread to my chest until I could barely breathe. I curled up on my thin mattress, feeling for the first time the full weight of what I'd done, not just to Felicity, but to all of them, to myself. The shame was overwhelming. And yet, beneath it all, there was something else. Something small and fragile, like a match flame in a hurricane. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to change. Not to escape consequences, those I deserved, but to finally become someone I could live with being. I fell asleep thinking of Felicity's note. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Maybe what I've been looking for all along wasn't a mansion or a trust fund or even in another person. Maybe it was buried somewhere inside me, waiting to be excavated from beneath the layers of lies I'd built my life upon. Tomorrow, I decided I would start digging. My trial lasted 2 weeks. 14 days of having my life dissected, my manipulations exposed, my carefully constructed persona dismantled piece by piece until there was nothing left but the naked truth of who I really was. Felicity testified on the 8th day. She entered the courtroom like a queen, chin high, shoulders back, eyes clear. When she took the stand, her voice never wavered as she described our marriage in clinical detail, as if recounting someone else's story. He would wait until I was sleeping, then replace my medication with caffeine pills or sugar tablets. She explained to the jury. When I have episodes as a result, he'd film only the worst parts, editing out his provocations. The prosecutor displayed photos of my handwritten notes, discovered when Felicity had finally searched my home office, detailed logs of medication tampering, schedules for isolating her from friends, scripts for gaslighting conversations designed to trigger anxiety attacks. Did you ever suspect what your husband was doing? The prosecutor asked. Not at first, Felicity admitted. I trusted him completely. When my symptoms worsened, I blamed myself. That's what mental illness does. It makes you question your own reality. Luke used that against me. When did you begin to suspect? About 8 months ago. My psychiatrist noticed patterns in my episodes that didn't match typical bipolar cycling. They were too predictable, almost scheduled. She glanced at me briefly. That's when we installed the cameras. I kept my expression blank, but inside I was seething. 8 months. For 8 months she'd been gathering evidence against me while I thought I was manipulating her. The student had become the master. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit 47, the prosecutor said, and a video began playing on the courtroom screens. It showed me in our kitchen, carefully opening Felicity's pill organizer while she slept upstairs. With surgical precision, I replaced her medication with identical-looking tablets from an unmarked bottle. Then I looked directly at the hidden camera and smiled, a cold, satisfied smile that sent chills through the courtroom. I hadn't known about the camera, of course. The smile was just me, congratulating myself on my cleverness. The jury gasped. I closed my eyes, knowing it was over. When I opened them, Felicity was staring at me, not with hatred or anger, but with something worse, a profound sadness, as if mourning something precious that had died. In that moment, I finally understood what I'd truly lost. Not the money or the mansion, but the love of a woman who had once seen something worthwhile in me, something worth fighting for, something that perhaps had never really existed at all. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. I was convicted on all counts: fraud, tamper with evidence, domestic abuse, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The judge sentenced me to 15 years. As they led me away in handcuffs, I caught a glimpse of Felicity in the gallery, the colonel's protective arm around her shoulders. Beside them sat Mike, his hand resting easily on the small of her back. I expected to feel jealousy, but instead I felt a strange relief. At least someone was there to support her, to protect her, even if it wasn't me. Later, my lawyer told me that Felicity had asked the judge for leniency in my sentencing. Why would she do that? I asked, genuinely confused. She said that punishing you wouldn't heal her. He replied with a shrug. Said she wanted to break the cycle of pain. The irony was bitter. In the end, the person I had tried to portray as unstable and vindictive had shown more compassion than I ever had. Prison is a great equalizer. Here, my charm and manipulation tactics mean nothing. I'm just another inmate, no better or worse than the men around me. It's oddly freeing. I've been assigned to work in a prison library, a quiet, dusty place where I spend hours shelving books and helping other inmates find materials for their GED studies or legal research. The monotony of the work gives me time to think, to really examine the choices that led me here. The first few months, I was still angry at Felicity for exposing me, at the colonel for interfering, at Mike for taking what I considered mine. But anger is exhausting to maintain, especially when you begin to recognize its hollowness. 6 months into my sentence, I started writing letters. Not to Felicity. I respected her need for closure, too much of that. But to the others, the women from college I manipulated and discarded, the friends I betrayed, the landlords I defrauded. One by one, I confessed my wrongs and asked for nothing in return. Most never responded. A few sent back my letters unopened. One, a woman named Claire who I convinced to drop out of medical school to follow me to California, only to abandon her when she'd served her purpose, wrote back a single line. Your apology changes nothing, but I forgive you anyway. Not for you, but for me. Her words haunted me for weeks. The idea that forgiveness could be something you grant not to release others, but to free yourself. On the 1-year anniversary of my sentencing, I received an unexpected visitor. You look different, the colonel said, studying me across the visitation table. Less punchable. Prison food? I replied with a small smile. Does wonders for the complexion. He snorted, then pushed a thick manila envelope across the table. Felicity asked me to give you these. I opened it cautiously. Inside were divorce papers, already finalized, and a stack of photos. Me and Felicity on our honeymoon in Bali, at her family's Christmas gathering, dancing at a charity gala. In each one, we look happy, or at least she did. I was always slightly turned away. I scanned in the room for something better, someone wealthier to charm. Why is she sending me these? She's cleaning house. Moving forward. The colonel leaned back in his chair. She and Mike are engaged. The news hit me with unexpected force. Not jealousy exactly, but a profound sense of loss for something I'd never truly appreciated while I had it. She's happy, he continued, his eyes never leaving my face. Really happy. I haven't seen her like this since before she met you. Maybe not even then. Good, I said and meant it. She deserves that. Yes, she does. He studied me carefully. You know what's strange? Despite everything, she still believes there's something worth saving in you. She thinks this whole experience might actually be good for you in the long run. I looked down at the photos, at the woman who had loved me despite my flaws, who had seen potential in me that I'd never seen in myself. She always did have more faith in me than I deserved. That's the thing about faith, the colonel said quietly. It's not about what you deserve. It's about possibility. Is that why you're really here? To talk about possibilities? He shrugged his massive shoulders. I'm here because she asked me to check on you, to see if prison was breaking you or rebuilding you. And your verdict? Jury's still out, but I'm seeing glimpses of a human being in there. It's a start. As he stood to leave, I called after him, Tell her I'm sorry, not for getting caught, but for who I was, for what I did to her. The colonel nodded. I'll tell her, but words are cheap, Luke. If you're really sorry, prove it by becoming someone different. How do I do that locked in here? Change happens in the mind first. The rest follows. He tapped his temple. You've got 15 years to figure out. 3 years into my sentence, I received a letter from Felicity. The envelope contained a single photograph. Her and Mike on their wedding day, standing on the steps of the Pacific Heights mansion. She was radiant in a simple white dress, her face tilted up toward her new husband with an expression of pure joy. On the back, she'd written, Thank you for setting me free. I stared at the photo for hours, tracing the lines of her smile with my fingertip. There was no malice in her message, no gloating, just gratitude for an ending that had become her beginning. That night, alone in my cell, I finally wept, not for myself, but for her, for the pain I'd caused, for the time I'd stolen, for the trust I'd broken, but also tears of gratitude that in losing everything, she'd found herself again. Perhaps, in my own strange way, I really had set her free, not through any nobility of my own, but through the cosmic justice that had exposed my machinations and forced her to reclaim her power. 5 years into my sentence, I was transferred to a minimum security facility and allowed to enroll in college courses. I chose psychology, finding a bitter irony in studying the very mechanisms I'd once used to manipulate others. But something unexpected happened as I delved into human mind. I began to understand my own, the abandoned child seeking validation through control, the wounded boy who'd learned that love was transactional, the young man who built walls so high he trapped himself inside them. Understanding didn't excuse my actions, but it did illuminate them, and with illumination came the first real possibility of change. In my 7th year, I started counseling other inmates, men whose crimes often stemmed from the same wounded places as my own, men who, like me, had spent lifetimes running from pain by inflicting it on others. We're all broken, I told them in our group sessions. But broken doesn't mean beyond repair. Words I was finally beginning to believe myself. 10 years into my sentence, I received another unexpected visit from the colonel. He was older now, his hair entirely silver, but still imposing in his custom suit. You're a hard man to keep track of, he said gruffly. 3 facility transfers in 10 years. Always seeking better library opportunities. I replied with a small smile. They let me run the book club now. He snorted. From con man to book club leader. Quite the fall. Or rise, depending on how you look at it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded as if confirming something to himself. Felicity's pregnant, due in August. The news settled over me like a gentle rain. That's wonderful. Please give her my congratulations. Already did. She asked me to give you this. He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a simple note. Some broken things, when mended, become more beautiful than they were before. I hope you find your gold. Luke. Beneath her signature was a small drawing of a cracked bowl, its fractures filled with gold. Kintsugi. The Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, transforming damage into beauty. She's still too good for this world. I murmured. Yes, the colonel agreed. But she's found someone who understands that, who treasures it instead of exploiting it. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of regret and genuine happiness for her. Good. That's as it should be. You know, he said thoughtfully, for years I wondered what she ever saw in you, why she chose you when she could have had anyone. I think I'm finally starting to understand. Oh, she sees the gold in the cracks. Always has. He met my eyes directly. Question is, was she right about you? Is there gold in there somewhere? I considered the question seriously. I don't know, but I'm looking for it. He nodded, satisfied. That's a start. My release date arrived with little fanfare, just paperwork, a small box of possessions, and a bus ticket to San Francisco. 15 years of my life, reduced to a cardboard box and a ticket. The colonel was waiting for me outside the prison gates, leaning against a sleek black car. He was fully white-haired now, his face more lined, but still standing tall and imposing in his tailored suit. Didn't expect a welcome committee, I said, approaching cautiously. Not a committee, just me. He opened the passenger door. Get in. I'll give you a ride to your halfway house. The colonel drove in silence for several miles before speaking. You know, there's a theory about sin and redemption that I've been thinking about. Let me guess, eternal damnation? He chuckled. No, it's the idea that we're all sinners in different ways. That the path to redemption isn't about becoming perfect, but about acknowledging our specific brokenness. I looked out at the passing landscape, so changed from when I'd last seen it. Sounds like you've been reading my psychology textbooks. Been reading a lot of things in my retirement. He glanced at me. The point is, maybe you and Felicity weren't so different after all. Both struggling with illnesses. Hers biological, yours spiritual. Both needing healing. Poetic, but I was still the villain in this story. Oh, absolutely, he agreed cheerfully. A first-class asshole. But villains can have origin stories too. We drove in silence for another mile before he continued. She's happy, you know. Really happy. 2 kids now, a boy and a girl. The house is full of noise and artwork and science projects. Mike built a tree house in the backyard that's better engineered than most actual houses. I smiled at the image. Good. She deserves that life. Yes, she does. He pulled up to a modest building with a sign reading New Beginnings Transitional Housing. Before I got out, he handed me an envelope. She wanted you to have this. Said to tell you there's no need to respond, but she wanted you to know. Inside was a single photograph, Felicity with her new family. She sat on a porch swing, a toddler in her lap, and a baby in her arms. Mike beside her with his arm around her shoulders. They were all laughing at something off camera, a perfect moment of joy captured in time. On the back was written, "We're both free now. Make it count." I looked up to thank the colonel, but he was already pulling away, one hand raised in farewell. Standing on the sidewalk with my cardboard box and bus ticket, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 15 years. Possibility. Not the false promise of schemes and manipulations, but the genuine potential of a life rebuilt from the ground up. Felicity had been right all along. There was gold in the cracks of my broken self. It had just taken losing everything to find it. As long as you're listening to this, you might be wondering what the point of my story is. Is it a cautionary tale about greed? A redemption narrative? A confession? Perhaps it's all of these things. But most of all, it's an acknowledgement that we are all capable of both terrible harm and remarkable growth. The washing machine repairman didn't just fix my wife. He helped her rediscover herself beneath the layers of doubt and anxiety I'd buried her under. In doing so, he inadvertently fixed something in me too. He shattered the illusion that I could control another person's life without consequences to my own soul. For years, I thought Felicity was a broken one, her bipolar disorder flaw to be exploited. I never recognized my own sickness. The endless hunger for more, the inability to value what I had, was a truly debilitating condition. We were both ill in our own ways. The difference was that she fought her demons while I surrendered to mine. If there's anything I've learned from this long, painful journey, it's that sometimes the person who needs fixing isn't who you think. Sometimes the apparent victim is actually the stronger one. Sometimes the one who seems to have it all together is crumbling inside. And sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find what you really need. Now I have a question for you. How would you act in Felicity's shoes? Let's discuss in the comments. Subscribe and stay tuned for more curious and intense stories.